72% of young men have a favourable view of young women. 7%, so not very many really, have an unfavourable view.
7%. All of the propaganda, adolescence, all the fucking non-stop Andrew Tate, blah, blah, blah. Well, Andrew Tate's a loser, right? Andrew Tate has failed to make young men hate young women. He has failed.
I disagree at this point. Not that Andrew Tate failed or is incorrect, but that the figure therefore proves something. In polling, in trying to figure out numbers, the problem with the polling is that it doesn't account for people who lie. You can get fired from your job if you say you hate certain groups of people. You can have the feds at your door if you say you hate certain groups of people. For example, 2 people who are incels got arrested and put in jail in the United States of America because they hate women. Actually, no, it was 1 incel who got arrested. But that's the thing. There is active incentives in place for people who are racist or sexist to stay down low, to hide their power level, if you will, to make it seem like they are actually not those things because it benefits them. If you really wanted to have accurate polling information regarding these topics, you would go and you'd make a public poll with anonymous votes. That way, you're not standing in front of a person on an interview or in a one-to-one person conversation, because there's no incentive in that circumstance of it being anonymous to lie or deceive. You're just going to vote what you think, right? In an anonymous poll, right? In an anonymous poll online, there is no... What's the word? There's no incentives in place for you to lie. There was a guy who was a I forget what it was. I don't think he was an incel, but he had some sort of like controversial opinion, and they found out where he worked. Oh no, I remember what it was. It was a guy who said he was a Nazi. He said, are you a Nazi? You sound kind of like a Nazi." He's like, "Yeah, sure." And so they found out where he lived. They found out where he worked, and they got him fired. So, in a circumstance where the reality is that if you hold any negative opinions of certain groups, of certain protected classes, the reality is that you will be discriminated by society, you will be kicked out of jobs, and you will have feds at your door trying to arrest you. Of course, there's going to be a high percentile of men who say they like women because it's a feminist government which will arrest you, take away your jobs if you say otherwise. The true sexism in this society is that you could go on social media, say you hate men, say you hate all masculinity, and get no charges, get no FBI at your door trying to arrest you, put you in jail, get no deplatforming from social media, you get no job, you don't get fired from your job for doing that. But if you hate women, that's where you get all these punishments, right? My main point with this is that I don't necessarily think pulling information proves anything, because people have a lot of incentives to lie about this stuff. Like, a lot of incentives. And people could say, well, you're wrong, we have more free speech in this country. Laws don't mean anything, dude. If the government says we want to arrest you for speech we don't like, that's what they'll do. That's what they have done. If the organization with the exclusive right to force and monopoly on force says we are going to use force in X way to protect X group, it doesn't matter if there's laws on the paper saying, oh, we're not allowed to infringe on speech. If the government wants to infringe on speech, it doesn't matter if there's laws against it. They're going to do it. and you don't have to agree with me per se on this, but that's the reality we see routinely happen. There are people who get arrested for speech. There are people who get fired for speech. The reality being is that you have certain speech that is literally not allowed. I'm going to turn this argument on its head. If Andrew Tate did not have opinions that were liked or well regarded by people, I don't think he would have an audience. I don't think there would be an audience or a group of people watching his content and subscribing to his channels or doing any of that sort of stuff if they didn't like what he had to say. You can see the amount of people who subscribe to Andrew Tate, watch him, comment on his videos, etc. And it's a fair number. And if those people didn't represent, if it was such a small percentage of people, he wouldn't have like 200, 300k subscribers, right? And I get like there's a distinction between like, online people, to some sense, and the real world, but that's still a lot of people who agree with him. That's still a lot of people who endorse his viewpoints. We can actually, I don't know if his channel's still up, I think it got banned, right? Free speech, am I right? But I'll check after at some point, I might comment it, but if his view did not represent anyone, he wouldn't be popular, right? That's not to say, I think his views are correct. I think he's kind of a hypocrite. But I don't really think his views are unpopular in the way that he's suggesting. If they were unpopular, I don't think they would have to arrest him. I don't think they would have to charge him and try to indict him. That reeks to me like he's a threat. And he wouldn't be a threat if he didn't have numbers. And we do know he has a lot of people who subscribe to him, watch his content. So, I just think his analysis on this is wrong. Because A, people lie on polling, and B, we do know that Andrew Tate has a sizable audience, right? But, this isn't an endorsement of Tate or anything. I think he's kind of a hypocrite. I don't like him, but, he's the type of guy who, he's not even really an incel, he's kind of like a rich scumbag who likes to flex his money and wealth on people. Oh, I have a rich, FBI father who, worked as a fucking grandmaster of chess. He was like a champion, and and I managed to get into a MMA circuit because my dad was pretty well renowned. Even if he wasn't, I probably would have had money to lean back on. But that sort of guy who has all that money to lean back on, he has name recognition via his father, to some sense. This sort of guy will tell you, oh, just work hard, brokey, you're a loser. I'm like, that's your incel guy, okay? His message to young men is, you guys are all losers and you're brokies. The idea he's like an ardent supporter of men is kind of ridiculous. He's a rich nepo baby who hates men. I think Cowell Benjamin here, Sargon, I think there's a lot of flaws in his viewpoint here. That's just my opinion on the topic here, and I'm going to end it here.